Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking a really unique approach.
Yeah, it's a bit different today.
It is. It's almost like we're prepping for a major certification in, AI governance and operations. We've got this whole stack of AI questions, answers, detailed explanations,
Right.
and we're going to unpack them. Think of us as your guides, not just giving you the answers, but really getting into the why they matter, what they mean in the real world.
Exactly. The material we're drawing from, it's structured almost like a learning resource.
Mm.
It's designed to get you up to speed fast on some really critical AI concepts.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking everything from, ethics all the way to practical implementation, auditing, the works.
Okay.
And our goal for you today, it's really to boil down these sometimes pretty complex topics
Yeah.
into clear, actionable insights,
Yeah.
things you can actually use to understand AI better.
Absolutely. So our mission, really, is to walk you through these concepts one by one. Make sure you don't just know the facts, but you really get their significance. We're here to help you navigate this, well, it's a pretty rich and dynamic landscape, isn't it? AI knowledge. Connect the dots, see the bigger picture. Okay, so let's kick things off right at the beginning. When an organization integrates an AI model into, say, an existing software system, what's the main driver? What's the number one goal? Is it just about the tech itself?
Well, fundamentally, it's all about making the AI usable.
Mm-hmm.
That's the primary goal.
Mm-hmm.
Facilitating better user interaction and application.
Usable, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you could have the most brilliant AI model, incredibly powerful, but if it's just, sitting there isolated,
Yeah.
it's not delivering value.
Right.
Its effectiveness really hinges on being accessible. Accessible to end users through, ideally, straightforward inputs and outputs.
Mm-hmm.
Things like model learning, that's mostly training phase work, and security, well, security is always critical, but it's kind of a broader concern than just the integration piece itself.
Mhm.
Even optimization comes second to just making it usable for people.
That's a really crucial distinction, isn't it? Taking that theoretical power and making it practical. It's like that aha moment.
Mm.
A great model in a vacuum, if it can't interact, it's
Yes, theory.
just a theoretical capability, not a real solution. So
Right.
making it usable for everyday interactions, that's the absolute key. And this idea of usability, it goes beyond just one model, I imagine. Thinking enterprise-wide, what's the biggest strategic plus of having a proper AI framework rather than just, scattered projects?
The framework. Well, the biggest advantage there, hands down, is ensuring all your AI initiatives actually line up with the organization's main goals and values.
Alignment?
Exactly. Alignment. A solid AI framework gives you essential guidance for rolling out AI across the whole enterprise.
Mhm.
And crucially, it's adaptable, right? It can fit each organization's unique structure, their specific needs. It helps tie AI development, deployment, everything directly to industry best practices. So you're making sure your AI efforts aren't just, cool tech projects, but they're strategic investments that actually resonate with the company's core mission, its values. Things like maybe boosting revenue or having human oversight, those might happen, but they're kind of secondary to that big picture alignment.
That really paints the picture, moving from just trying things out to strategic integrated implementation. Okay, let's dig a bit deeper into the models themselves. Deep learning models, especially when they're used in really business-critical applications. Where's the main risk there?
Yeah, deep learning in critical apps. The primary risk, the big one, is their inherent black box nature.
Ah, the black box.
Yeah, the inability to fully explain how the model made its decision. These models, just by how they're built, can be incredibly complex. It gets really, really hard to trace back exactly how they landed on a specific answer or outcome. And that lack of transparency, that's a huge liability, especially in contexts where you absolutely need accountability, compliance. A clear reason for why something happened, it actually outweighs things like cost or data preprocessing, especially when understanding the why is just non-negotiable.
It's like, imagine a doctor giving a diagnosis but having no clue why they reached that conclusion.
Exactly.
Or a financial algorithm deciding on a loan with zero rationale. In business, if you can't explain the why, particularly if a decision goes wrong, that's a massive liability. It hits trust, accountability right at the core.
Precisely.
And speaking of accountability, let's switch to the data. Outdated data in AI training. That's a constant headache, isn't it? Not something you fix just once. How do you best deal with that?
You're absolutely right. It's ongoing. The most effective way to mitigate that outdated data problem is by integrating new information retrieval techniques.
Okay, so active retrieval.
Yes. It directly tackles the issue by constantly feeding the model fresh, relevant data. Think of it as proactive model maintenance. You're always updating its knowledge base. It's not just about having good quality data at the start or strong security.
Right.
Those are vital, obviously, but they don't solve the freshness issue as data naturally gets old and the world changes around it.
That's a really practical, important distinction. Okay, let's cover a really fundamental concept, one that underpins so much of AI. Supervised versus unsupervised learning. What's the primary difference? It's key for so many
Yeah,
applications.
it's a core distinction. The primary difference is pretty straightforward. Supervised learning relies fundamentally on labeled data,
Labeled, meaning.
meaning the training data comes with the answers or labels already attached.
Hmm.
The model learns to associate inputs with those predefined outputs. It's like teaching a kid with flashcards. You show a picture of a cat, you say cat.
Got it. Flashcards.
Unsupervised learning, on the other hand, works with unlabeled data. There are no predefined answers. The model's job is to find patterns, structures, maybe groupings within the data all on its own.
Okay.
Like giving that kid a big pile of different toys and saying, sort these out, without telling them how. They have to find the patterns themselves.
That flashcard analogy really clicks. Okay, switching gears to some more advanced AI. Generative adversarial networks, GANs. How do they get so good at creating really realistic data? It's a fascinating process, kind of competitive, right?
Oh, it absolutely is competitive.
Yeah.
GANs enhance their ability by training two components simultaneously, pushing each other to improve authenticity.
Two components.
Yeah, imagine a super high-stakes game of cat and mouse. You've got the generator, think of it as a master art forger, trying to create perfect fakes.
Okay.
And then you have the discriminator, like a world-class art detective, trying to spot those fakes.
Ah, I see.
So every time a detective spots a fake, the forger learns from that mistake and gets better at making fakes. And every time the forger successfully fools the detective also learns and gets better at spotting fakes.
So they constantly improve each other.
Exactly. This constant adversarial one-upmanship, that's the secret sauce. That's why GANs can produce incredibly realistic data images, voices, text stuff that's often really hard to tell from the real thing. It's way beyond simpler methods.
All right, let's shift focus a bit to the human side of AI adoption. You can build the most amazing AI, but if your employees aren't buying in, it's kind of a non-starter, isn't it?
Absolutely. People are key.
So how can companies best improve employee attitudes towards AI? Get them on board.
Well, the best approach involves a couple of things. Conducting enterprise-wide training on the AI program itself is important, but crucially, also assigning department-level champions.
Champions, like internal advocates.
Exactly. People within departments who can answer questions, address concerns about AI-related changes directly. This approach works because it fosters transparency, open communication.
Mm.
It directly tackles worries people might have about their jobs. And it helps reduce skepticism because you've got this sense of shared responsibility. Learning from a peer, from one of these champions, is often way more effective for getting real adoption than just, rolling out new policies or doing purely technical training.
Right.
It really underlines that AI isn't just about code. It's fundamentally about people, how you communicate, how you involve them, support them through the change. That's absolutely critical for success and buy-in.
It sounds like building that internal trust and having advocates on the ground floor is crucial. Okay, following on from that,
Right.
Why is workforce analysis so important when a company is thinking about using AI?
Workforce analysis is key primarily to navigate the inevitable changes in job roles and, really importantly, to proactively upskill employees.
Upskill.
Okay, yeah, because AI implementation will change existing jobs. It just will. Responsibilities shift. A thorough analysis helps you pinpoint which roles will be most impacted, what new skills people are going to need, and where you can offer retraining. It's a proactive approach. It ensures people aren't just, left behind, but actually empowered with new skills. It helps the transition, makes the workforce more adaptable. It's really a human capital strategy, not just a tech decision. It looks beyond just the financial numbers.
And once you've got the people strategy and the roles sorted, how do you make sure the AI development lifecycle itself is working effectively? What helps an IS auditor really evaluate that?
Evaluating the life cycle. The best tool there is using robust metrics that were developed specifically for the AI program.
Specific metrics.
Yes, continuous program metrics give you objective, ongoing ways to monitor and evaluate the AI solutions. This lets auditors check not just if it's technically working, but also if it's sticking to ethical standards, running efficiently, and managing risks properly within that whole AI governance framework.
Okay.
These metrics give a much broader, more complete picture of effectiveness than just looking at, say, coding standards or ROI calculations. Those are just too narrow.
So clear, measurable data points covering the whole process. And who's guiding this overall strategic direction? Who's providing the high-level oversight? What should the primary focus be for an AI steering committee?
Right, this steering committee. Their primary focus should really be on providing insight into newly identified risks and opportunities.
Risks and opportunities.
Exactly. They play this really vital strategic role. They're responsible for looking at potential risks that come with adopting AI, prioritizing them, but also spotting new opportunities where AI could deliver major value.
Hmm.
This strategic oversight makes sure AI initiatives are lined up with the organization's main objectives and are managed proactively from a risk standpoint. They shouldn't get bogged down in, signing off on daily budgets or the nitty-gritty technical details. And importantly, they are also the ones most likely responsible for making sure the entire AI program sticks to ethical practices and regulations. They set those standards and make sure they're followed across the board.
That makes total sense. They're like the strategic compass for AI. And speaking of ethics, which is so critical, what's the best way to ensure ethical considerations are properly addressed, really baked into the AI strategy from the start? It often feels like it comes later, but it needs to be foundational.
It absolutely has to be foundational. You're right. The best way is establishing a specific AI ethics and compliance committee.
A dedicated committee.
Yes, and importantly, one that includes stakeholders from all the relevant business departments. A dedicated, multidisciplinary committee like that gives you a structured, comprehensive way to identify, oversee, and address ethical risks and regulatory duties throughout the AI lifecycle.
Okay.
This means you have comprehensive accountability instead of fragmented oversight where maybe responsibility is scattered, or you're just relying on KPIs, which honestly aren't enough on their own for the full range of ethical issues. This proactive approach helps make sure AI solutions align with broader ethical principles, societal values. It's about moving beyond just ticking compliance boxes to really thinking about the impact.
That dedicated structure definitely provides the focus ethics needs. Okay, building on that, once an AI model is up and running, what's the single most important reason to keep monitoring its outputs? We're not just looking for bugs, are we?
No, definitely not just bugs. The most important reason is to identify and address potential biases that might not get flagged by your standard error reports.
Ah, the subtle biases.
Exactly. Your typical error reporting might catch a technical glitch, but it often misses those subtle or emerging biases. And biases can crop up over time, maybe because the data changes or the system's behavior evolves somehow, and that can lead to unfair or discriminatory outcomes.
Right.
So continuous monitoring of the outputs is absolutely critical for transparency, for accountability, and just for the ethical operation of these systems. It helps you catch those nuanced issues that standard reports just won't see.
So it's about being vigilant against those unintended consequences that aren't immediately obvious. Okay, stepping back a bit, what's a key overarching outcome of putting robust AI governance practices in place across a whole organization? What's the ultimate win?
A really key outcome of implementing AI governance is that effective governance ensures your AI systems operate in line with organizational values while also maintaining compliance.
Values and compliance?
Yes, it hits that crucial balance. It helps integrate AI development and deployment within the company's ethical principles, but at the same time, it makes sure you're adhering to all the relevant legal and regulatory requirements. That dual benefit value alignment and compliance, that's a primary goal. It's much bigger than just, say, getting things deployed faster or having fancier algorithms.
Okay, let's pivot now to AI risk management. Every new tech brings new risks. AI is no exception. So first off, when you're putting together an AI strategy, how do you best tackle those critical skill gaps you might have in your organization?
Yeah, skill gaps are common. The best way to address them when you're forming that initial strategy is usually to engage external experts for guidance.
Bring in consultants.
Pretty much. Bringing in external consultants can immediately fill those gaps. They bring specialized knowledge, experience that directly helps with strategic planning, implementation. It stops you getting delayed or limited because you're waiting on internal training, or maybe holding back on AI adoption because you just don't have the expertise in-house yet. It's a quick way to inject that needed knowledge.
That seems like a very pragmatic way to bridge those immediate gaps. Okay, let's talk about a very specific threat now. Adversarial attacks on machine learning models. What's the primary security risk there?
Right, adversarial attacks. The primary security risk is manipulating the input data to trick the model into making wrong predictions.
Tricking the model? How?
These attacks are designed to subtly change the input data, maybe in ways humans wouldn't even notice.
Great.
But it causes the AI model to misclassify something, misinterpret it, or just make a completely wrong decision. This directly compromises the model's reliability, its integrity. It's different from someone stealing the model or just general performance issues.
It's like someone whispering bad instructions into your smart speaker,
Exactly.
making it misunderstand you and do something totally off the wall. The decision itself is compromised by a sneaky, subtle input change.
Precisely. The integrity of the decision is the target.
That's a pretty chilling thought considering how many systems rely on accurate input. Okay, how do we make sure ethical considerations get woven into the very start of the AI lifecycle? Like in the planning and design phases?
The best way to embed ethics early is by performing a preliminary risk assessment.
A risk assessment that includes ethics.
Yes, a comprehensive preliminary risk assessment. One that looks at all potential impacts, technical, operational, sure, but also specifically ethical and human rights considerations. This proactive approach makes sure ethical standards and safeguards are built in right from the beginning, not just tacked on later or only considered when something goes wrong. It sets the stage for responsible AI development.
That makes sense. Identify those potential ethical traps before they get baked in. What about risk when using third-party AI solutions? Lots of companies outsource parts or use external models these days.
Yeah, third-party risk is a big one. Establishing a shared responsibility model is the most effective way to reduce that risk.
Shared responsibility model.
Basically, it means clearly defining who's responsible for what between the vendor and the client organization. When each side clearly understands and agrees on their specific roles, things like data governance, security, operational oversight, it significantly cuts down the overall risk to the enterprise. This goes deeper than just having an SLA or sharing your internal privacy policy. It's a more robust framework for managing that shared risk.
So clear boundaries, mutual understanding, really key there. Now let's think about a common performance issue. Model drift. What's the main concern with that? It implies that what works today might just stop working tomorrow.
That's exactly the issue. The primary concern with model drift is that the quality, the performance of a machine learning model can degrade over time. And that's because the relationships in the data within the system change.
The data itself changes.
Right. As real-world data evolves, the patterns, the distributions the model was originally trained on, they can shift. This makes its predictions less accurate, less relevant. This performance decay is different from, say, privacy issues or just expecting performance to stay static. It really highlights how dynamic the real world is and how that impacts models trained on past data. What's fascinating here is just how dynamic these AI systems have to be. They aren't static things. This drift means you need continuous vigilance. It really drives home that deploying an AI model isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of monitoring, adapting to keep it effective.
That really underlines the need for constant attention after deployment. Okay, now, in really high-risk situations, maybe an AI-related risk goes above acceptable levels, but you simply can't avoid it.
No, you definitely can't ignore it. When you have a risk that you can't eliminate or bring down to an acceptable level, the best course of action is to monitor the risk actively to manage potential escalations.
Active monitoring.
Yes. A proactive monitoring strategy lets the organization track how that risk is evolving and respond effectively if things start to change or worsen. This ensures you stay aligned with the organization's risk tolerance, resource allocation, and it enables timely intervention rather than waiting for a crisis that might force costly overhauls or outsourcing, which often don't eliminate the inherent risk anyway.
Monitoring the unavoidable makes perfect sense. Okay, let's talk data exposure. What's the biggest risk when a company uses its own data to fine-tune a third-party, pre-trained AI model? You're essentially blending your sensitive stuff with someone else's foundation.
And that's exactly where the biggest risk lies. If the third-party model supplier, maybe unknowingly, embeds vulnerabilities in their model, then your fine-tuned model could be compromised. And that could expose any of your enterprise data used for that fine-tuning to other users, or worse, attackers. Think data poisoning, data leakage.
Wow.
It highlights severe confidentiality implications. When you fine-tune a third-party model with your sensitive data, you are fundamentally trusting that vendors' security, their integrity, Any flaw on their end could directly lead to your proprietary sensitive information getting out. That's a critical threat.
That is a serious vulnerability to weigh up. And with generative AI booming, are there specific data security and confidentiality risks tied just to Gen AI?
Yes, with generative AI, the most significant risk for data security and confidentiality is something called a model inversion attack.
Model inversion attack.
Yeah, this is where attackers basically try to reverse engineer the AI model to pull out the sensitive training data or personal information it learned from.
What?
Unlike, say, supply chain attacks or denial of service, which have different impacts. A model inversion attack directly targets the confidentiality of the data used to train the Gen AI model. Attackers can analyze the model's outputs, maybe its parameters, and try to infer or even reconstruct the original sensitive data. It's a direct, severe threat to data privacy.
That really changes the game for protecting training data. Okay, last one on risk management infrastructure decisions. What's the most critical thing to consider when a company is deciding between hosting an AI application in-house versus using cloud infrastructure?
The most critical consideration there is finding the right balance,
Yeah.
balancing oversight and personalization on one hand with adaptability and expenses on the other.
Okay, explain that trade-off.
Sure. In-house infrastructure gives you more direct control, more oversight. You can tailor solutions exactly to your needs, your security requirements.
Yeah.
But it often means higher upfront costs, and it's usually less inherently scalable.
All right.
Cloud infrastructure, conversely, offers huge adaptability, scalability, and often it's more cost-efficient, especially with pay-as-you-go models. But you're relying on a third-party provider, and you might have less granular control.
So it's a trade-off.
Exactly. A careful trade-off is essential, based on the company's specific situation, their resources, their strategic priorities.
All right, let's shift our focus squarely onto privacy and data governance now. Absolutely critical in the AI world. First up, privacy-enhancing technologies, PETs. What's a primary benefit of using these in AI systems?
A primary benefit of PETs in AI systems is increased user control over their data.
User control.
Yeah, PETs are specifically designed to protect user privacy by giving individuals more control over their personal data. At the same time, they help reduce privacy risks for the organizations using the data. That's their core job, really. It's different from maybe just reducing processing time or adding encryption. Those might be features, but the fundamental purpose of PETs is empowering the individual regarding their data.
That empowerment aspect is key. Okay, on a practical level, when you're actually building an AI solution, what's the most effective thing you can do to ensure adequate data privacy during development?
Implementing data anonymization techniques is probably the most effective measure during development.
Anonymization.
Right. Anonymization aims to make sensitive data untraceable back to the individual people it came from. This provides a really robust layer of privacy, pretty much regardless of the specific machine learning model you end up using. While things like balanced data sets are crucial for fighting bias, they don't directly tackle privacy in the same way. Anonymization means even if the data somehow gets exposed, it can't be linked back to individuals, which hugely reduces the privacy risk.
Anonymization really does sound like a strong shield. Okay, how do we best ensure that AI solutions stick to the broader privacy and data management policies throughout their entire life cycle, not just at the start?
Good question. A best practice is ensuring that any data and privacy controls that were applied to data at its original source actually transfer over and stay effective when that data moves to the AI data storage location, like a data lake, for instance.
So the controls follow the data.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of maintaining consistent controls throughout the whole data lifecycle. Privacy policies, management rules, they have to apply not just when you collect the data, but at every single stage where it's used, transformed, stored for AI. That ensures continuous compliance and protection. You can't just drop the ball halfway through the data's journey.
Maintaining that chain of custody for privacy controls is vital. Okay, dealing with highly sensitive info. Let's say transmitting employee medical data to a third-party large language model, an LLM. What single governance practice becomes the most essential in that scenario?
In that scenario, maintaining a meticulous inventory of data flows and access points is the most essential governance practice.
An inventory of flows and access.
Yes. When you're dealing with something as sensitive as employee medical data, knowing precisely where it came from, where it's going, how it's being changed, and crucially, who has access to it every single step. That's absolutely critical for effective data governance and compliance. This full visibility ensures accountability, control, and helps mitigate risks of unauthorized access or misuse.
Visibility equals control, especially with sensitive stuff. Okay, and when you're using those third-party LLMs for sensitive data processing, what's the best technical measure to ensure privacy during the interaction itself?
Encrypting all communications to the LLM is the best way to ensure privacy during that transmission.
Encryption in transit.
Absolutely. Encryption is a fundamental security measure. It protects sensitive data while it's moving to that external service. It makes sure that even if someone intercepts the communication channel, the data itself remains unreadable, unintelligible to anyone unauthorized. While things like restricting access or monitoring are important, encrypting the data as it travels is that critical first line of defense when sensitive info leaves your control.
Encryption sounds non-negotiable for data on the move. Okay, for an IT auditor looking at a third-party LLM's data handling practices, trying to ensure they comply with privacy regulations, what should be their absolute top priority to check?
An IT auditor's priority should be ensuring contractual data protection clauses are firmly in place.
The contracts.
Yes, looking at the vendor's privacy policy gives you an overview. Sure, an API speed is about performance, but legally binding contractual agreements are essential. Those clauses are what hold the vendor accountable for sticking to established data protection standards and regulations. Without clear contractual obligations, enforcing compliance becomes much, much harder. So for an auditor, checking those contracts is critical for vendor accountability and regulatory compliance.
Solid contracts are the bedrock then. Okay, putting all these privacy points together. What's the single most significant risk associated with medical data being sent to a third-party LLM? What's the biggest worry?
The most significant risk, hands down, is unauthorized access to that sensitive information.
Unauthorized access.
Yeah. Once sensitive medical data leaves the enterprise, goes to that third-party LLM, the organization loses direct control over it. That loss of control creates the highest primary privacy risk. Because if there's unauthorized access, the consequences could be severe privacy breaches, huge regulatory fines, serious reputational damage. While things like slow processing or lack of transparency are concerns, they just don't pose the same direct critical privacy threat as the potential for that data falling into the wrong hands.
Okay, let's dive into leading practices, ethics, regulations, and standards for AI. Beyond just general risk assessments, what type of assessment should really be prioritized during AI development to specifically tackle ethical issues head-on?
The assessment best prioritized for ethics is a Fundamental Rights Impact Assessment, or FRIA.
FRIA. Okay, what does that do specifically?
The FRIA specifically evaluates how using artificial intelligence might impact fundamental human rights and community standards. It goes deeper than general risk or privacy assessments by really focusing on identifying and analyzing potential impacts on basic rights that could stem from how the AI is used, the decisions it makes. Doing this ensures you integrate ethical standards early and you comprehensively consider this societal and human impacts. And this applies directly, for instance, if an IS auditor finds an AI system making medical decisions that could significantly affect patients, a FRIA should absolutely be conducted then.
That makes it very clear. A specific focus on human rights impact is paramount. Okay, how does academic research actually help shape best practices for AI solutions? What's its main role?
Academic research best informs best practices mainly by providing crucial industry insights.
Industry insights, not setting the standards directly.
Not usually directly setting standards, no. While academic research is obviously a huge source of knowledge and it influences algorithm development, its primary role in shaping best practices is offering those key insights that can then be applied within specific industries, finance, healthcare, retail, whatever it might be. It provides that foundational understanding that helps practitioners develop and refine their own best practices. It doesn't typically create the regulatory frameworks itself.
So it's about translating that cutting-edge knowledge into practical, sector-specific guidance.
Got it. Okay, for machine learning models used in automated decision-making, the stakes are incredibly high there. What's the most critical governance concern when deploying those models?
The most critical governance concern when deploying ML models for automated decision-making is ensuring the model is compliant with all applicable regulations and standards.
Compliance above all. Absolutely. Automated decision-making, especially in sensitive areas, carries huge legal and ethical weight. If that model's decisions aren't compliant, you're looking at potentially severe legal penalties, massive reputational damage, and a complete erosion of trust. Things like having enough computing power or real-time monitoring are important operationally. But compliance is that overarching governance concern that ensures the system operates within legal and ethical boundaries.
Compliance really is that non-negotiable baseline. In our increasingly connected world, what's most important when trying to align AI risk management practices with international frameworks? There's so many different ones.
Yeah, navigating the global landscape. What's most important there is ensuring compatibility with multiple standards, while, crucially, maintaining system adaptability across organizational boundaries.
Compatibility and adaptability.
Exactly. AI systems often operate across different countries, different jurisdictions, each with its own rules. So organizations need risk management practices that are flexible enough to comply with various international standards without completely crippling operations or adaptability. It's about building a resilient system that can handle diverse regulatory environments.
Flexibility within a global standard seems to be the goal. Okay, here's a real-world ethical puzzle. An HR department wants to send anonymized employee medical data to a vendor's LLM. Now, even if it's anonymized, what's the primary ethical concern?
Even with anonymization, the primary ethical concern boils down to trust issues related to the unauthorized sharing of employee data.
Trust issues, even if it's anonymized.
Yes, because the act of sharing sensitive employee medical data with an external vendor, especially without explicit authorization or very clear communication, can fundamentally break employee trust. It can hit morale, create a feeling that privacy is being violated, and really damage the company's reputation, regardless of whether the data masking techniques are perfect. Trust is just a cornerstone of ethical data handling, and it's easily eroded.
That's a subtle but really profound point about trust. Okay, building on that, what should be a company's absolute first priority when dealing with third-party LLM vendors and managing AI risk?
An organization's first priority should be to ensure that the vendor's data handling practices comply with established regulations.
Compliance.
Compliance first, always. Compliance with international standards is fundamental because it ensures consistent, reliable, legally sound data handling by that vendor. That's more critical initially than optimizing data storage or limiting data transparency. Regulatory compliance forms the baseline for trustworthy, responsible AI use, especially when you're involving third parties and sensitive data.
Compliance first. Got it. And just to wrap up this section, how can organizations best ensure their AI solutions truly align with ethical principles and broader societal values? What's the overarching approach?
The best way organizations can ensure that alignment is by performing proactive evaluations of ethical impacts.
Proactive evaluations.
Yes, proactive assessments, like those fundamental rights impact assessments, the FRAs we talked about, are essential. They help identify ethical concerns early in the AI development lifecycle. And that's crucial for making sure AI solutions are designed and deployed in a way that genuinely aligns with ethical principles and societal values. This forward-looking approach lets you address concerns before they become major problems or lead to negative societal outcomes.
All right, let's shift gears into the practical side, AI operations, putting AI into practice, starting with data management specific to AI. What's the most important thing for ensuring data privacy during the actual development phase of an AI model?
During development, applying the principle of least privilege is probably the most important thing for data privacy.
Least privilege. Remind us what that is.
It basically means employees should only be granted the absolute minimum level of access they need to do their specific job tasks effectively. By sticking to this principle, organizations drastically reduce the chances of unauthorized access to the sensitive data being used for model development. It strengthens privacy protections and cuts down the overall risk.
Makes sense. Minimize the potential attack surface, basically. Okay, for an AI model to stay effective over time, what data attribute best ensures it's always pulling the most up-to-date information?
Data currency is the attribute that best ensures an AI model retrieves the most up-to-date data.
Data currency.
Yeah, it refers to the timeliness, the freshness of the data relative to how it's being used. In dynamic environments, having current data is critical for an AI model to make accurate, relevant predictions. While other things like data relevance, availability, confidentiality are all important, currency specifically addresses that freshness factor, making sure the model isn't working off old news.
So timeliness is key, not just having lots of data. And when AI developers are trying to ensure impartiality, fairness in their model's decision-making, what's the most important consideration regarding the data itself?
The most important consideration for developers aiming for impartiality is data balancing.
Data balancing.
Right. Data balancing involves using techniques to deal with imbalanced data sets, situations where some classes or categories of data are way over or underrepresented compared to others.
Hmm.
Making sure no populations or attributes are disproportionately represented in the training data is crucial for mitigating biased decision-making. It leads to fairer, more impartial outcomes.
Like in healthcare.
Exactly. Perfect example. If you're training a model on common ailments, but maybe rare conditions are underrepresented, you'd use techniques like oversampling the rare ones or undersampling the common ones to balance it out. This helps ensure the model performs accurately and fairly for all conditions, not just the common ones.
That sounds absolutely vital for fairness and accuracy, especially in sensitive areas. Okay, what's the main role of a data steward when it comes to AI data? What's their core job in this ecosystem?
The main role of a data steward concerning AI data is essentially acting as a guardian of data integrity for AI applications.
Guardian of data integrity.
Yeah, that means ensuring the quality, the accuracy, the compliance of the data used to train and run the AI models. They oversee things like data collection, cleansing, governance practices, all critical for making sure AI outputs are reliable and ethical. While they might advise on testing data, their main responsibility is the trustworthiness of the data itself.
A true data guardian. Okay, moving to some more technical data handling stuff.
Yeah.
Which categorical data encoding technique assigns a unique integer, like 0, 1, 2, for each data category?
That would be label encoding.
Label encode.
Yes. So if you have categories like red, green, blue, label encoding might assign them 0, 1, and 2 respectively. It's different from, say, one-hot encoding, which creates new binary columns for each category, or ordinal encoding, which is used when there's a natural order. And here's the insight, right? That numerical assignment in label encoding implies an order to the AI. 0 is less than 1, 1 is less than 2. If your categories don't actually have a natural order like red, green, blue, this can accidentally introduce bias or make the AI misinterpret relationships that aren't really there.
Ah, so the choice of encoding matters.
Critically, understanding when to use label encoding versus, say, one-hot encoding becomes vital to ensure your AI doesn't learn unintended patterns from how you've represented the data.
That's a key detail that could easily lead to problems. Okay, what happens when a machine learning model just doesn't accurately capture the main patterns in its training data? What do we call that performance issue?
When an ML model fails to capture those dominant patterns accurately, that's called underfitting.
Underfitting.
Yeah. Underfitting happens when a model is maybe too simple or it hasn't been trained enough. It ends up performing poorly on both the training data and new unseen data because it just hasn't learned the fundamental relationships in the data set. It's the opposite of overfitting, where the model learns too much detail and gets stuck on the training data.
So underfitting means it's basically too simplistic for the job.
Got it. When dealing with really large-scale data analysis using AI, what's the primary data privacy risk?
The primary data privacy risk in large-scale AI analysis is often data collection beyond the necessary scope.
Collecting too much data.
Exactly. AI systems often thrive on vast amounts of data to improve accuracy. But gathering more data than you genuinely need for the specific purpose you have in mind can lead to major privacy concerns. This overcollection increases the risk of sensitive information being exposed or potentially misused, even if it's not directly causing inaccurate predictions or needing high processing power. It's that principle of, just because you can collect it doesn't mean you should. That's a really important ethical line to maintain. Okay, what's the main consideration for an IS auditor when they're reviewing a company's AI data management processes? What should they focus on?
The main consideration for an IS auditor reviewing AI data management processes is looking at the protection measures used on data that comes from different sources.
Protection measures across sources.
Right. It's critical to ensure that the privacy and security controls applied to data at its original source are consistently transferred and maintained when that data gets moved into new AI data storage locations, like data lakes or warehouses. This ensures the data stays protected and compliant with all the relevant policies and regulations throughout its entire lifecycle within the AI system.
Ensuring consistent security all the way through the data's journey. Okay, following up on our earlier chat about model drift, what's the most effective strategy for actually addressing data drift in ML models after they've already been deployed?
The most effective strategy post-deployment is periodically retraining the model with updated data sets. Yeah. Data drift happens when the statistical properties of what the model is trying to predict change over time. Regular retraining with new, current data lets the model learn these evolving relationships and maintain its accuracy and relevance as those underlying data distributions change out in the real world. And this ties back to balancing too, right? If you have a data set with an overrepresented class, using those data balancing techniques like oversampling or undersampling adjusts the distribution, improves performance, and mitigates bias that's often part of the retraining process too.
Continuous retraining really sounds like the only viable way to stay relevant in a constantly changing world. Okay, when using AI for categorizing data, what's the absolute most essential thing needed to make sure you're adhering to privacy standards?
Accurate detection of sensitive information is the most essential piece when using AI for categorization to meet privacy standards.
Accurate detection.
Think about it. If the AI solution can't correctly identify what actually is sensitive information within the data it's processing, then it can't possibly ensure that data gets properly secured, handled, or used according to privacy rules. Doesn't matter how much data you have or how you store it. Correctly identifying the sensitive stuff is the critical first step for any robust privacy protection. You can't protect what you don't know is sensitive.
That makes perfect sense. It's fundamental. And finally, on data management for this section, what's the best method to reduce the dimensionality of data, basically? Simplify it and improve a model's efficiency.
The best method for reducing data dimensionality and improving efficiency is feature selection.
Feature selection.
Yeah. Feature selection involves carefully choosing only the most relevant, most important features from your dataset to actually feed into the model. By getting rid of redundant or irrelevant features, the noise you streamline the model, reduce its complexity, and improve its efficiency. This can often lead to better performance and definitely faster training times. It's all about focusing on the signal and cutting out the noise, making the model leaner and meaner, effectively.
Okay, let's move into the development lifecycle for AI solutions now. First question. What often happens if you select a really large number of features when you're building an AI model? Can having too much information actually be a bad thing?
Oh yes, absolutely. Too much information can definitely be a bad thing. The common effect of selecting a huge number of features is an increased risk of overfitting and also reduced clarity.
Overfitting and less clarity.
Right. When a model gets exposed to too many features, especially features that are more noise than meaningful signal, it can start to essentially memorize the training data too specifically. It learns the quirks and noise rather than the underlying generalizable patterns.
Yeah.
This leads to poor performance when it sees new, unfamiliar data. And it also makes it much harder to figure out which features are actually driving the model's decisions, so you lose clarity. This also explains why reducing the number of features during training is often a key technique to reduce the risk of overfitting.
That's interesting, counterintuitive almost.
Yeah.
Sometimes less data or fewer features is actually more effective for generalization.
Okay, speaking of clarity, what tool or approach would most likely be used to help users actually understand the results coming out of a machine learning algorithm, especially for those tricky black box models?
For understanding those results, you'd most likely turn to explainable artificial intelligence, or XAI.
XAI.
Yeah, XAI is all about promoting transparency and interpretability in AI models. It directly tackles that black box problem we talked about earlier with complex systems like deep learning. It gives users tools and methods to dissect and understand how the model arrives at its decisions.
This isn't just good for augmenting user trust. It's also really important for things like regulatory compliance and ensuring ethical deployment. It's crucial for making AI feel less like some opaque mystery and more like a collaborative tool, ensuring decisions aren't just made, but actually understood.
XAI sounds absolutely vital for building confidence and getting people to actually adopt and trust these systems. Okay, as we scale up these incredibly powerful generative AI models, environmental impact is becoming a genuine concern. What can be done to help address that?
That's a growing concern for sure. Optimizing algorithmic efficiency can significantly help address the environmental impact of generative AI.
Algorithmic efficiency, how does that help?
Well, the servers needed to run these large Gen AI models consume massive amounts of energy and often water for cooling. More efficient algorithms mean you need fewer computational steps, fewer requests to get quality results. This directly reduces the energy consumption. It's a direct way to mitigate that substantial environmental footprint that comes with the huge computational demands of Gen AI. It's essentially about making our AI greener through smarter code.
Efficiency for sustainability makes sense. Now, thinking about AI projects within companies, unfortunately, many of them fail. What's usually the most significant factor contributing to AI project failure in an enterprise setting?
The most significant factor, more often than not, is a fundamental lack of alignment with organizational objectives.
Misalignment again.
Yes, if an AI solution is developed without a clear, direct connection to actual business goals or organizational needs, it's highly likely to fail. It might be technically brilliant, but if it doesn't solve a real business problem or deliver a strategic value, it often ends up being abandoned.
Mm.
This misalignment issue tends to overshadow other problems like development cost or maybe poor documentation. It's usually the primary reason projects don't succeed in the long run.
It really brings us back to that strategic vision, doesn't it? Making sure the why is clear from the start. Okay, when an IS auditor is checking the completeness of AI training data, especially if there are gaps or missing values, what technique best helps them verify that completeness?
Data imputation is what best helps an IS auditor ensure the completeness of AI training data in that scenario.
Data imputation.
Yeah. Missing values are a super common problem in training data. Could be due to human error, data flow interruptions, privacy redactions, whatever. Data imputation techniques involve replacing those missing values with substituted values, calculated in various ways. This ensures the data set used for training is complete and robust, allowing the auditor to verify the model isn't being trained on patchy or incomplete information.
So it's about filling in those blanks intelligently. And just to clarify the stages of the AI lifecycle, if a data engineer is busy cleaning and pre-processing data for a new AI model, which specific stage of the lifecycle are they working in?
That activity falls squarely within the development stage of the AI lifecycle.
Development. Okay.
Right. While you might acquire data earlier, the actual cleaning, transforming, pre-processing of that data, getting it ready to be used by the model is a critical part of the development phase. This is where the building, training, and refining of the actual AI model happens.
All right, let's talk change management now, but specifically how it applies to the unique challenges of AI. When you're overseeing data transformations in AI systems, what's the single most important component of an effective IT change management program?
The most important component for AI data transformations is keeping track of changes in the data that actually influence the AI's effectiveness.
Tracking the impact of data changes.
Exactly. It's not enough just to log that a data source was changed or a pre-processing step was updated.
Yeah.
You need to understand how those modifications directly impact the AI model performance, its reliability, its outputs. This critical insight allows you to effectively manage the dynamic environment these AI systems operate in, making sure the system keeps functioning as intended, even as the data underneath it evolves. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just about updating records. It's about understanding the impact of those changes on the AI's core function. That's a fundamentally different mindset for change management.
That really does sound like a profound shift in thinking for traditional change management teams. Okay, when it comes to making sure employees actually adopt new AI initiatives and stick with them, sustainable adoption, what's the best way to foster that long-term buy-in?
To get that sustainable adoption, creating an online forum where users can ask questions and learn from one another is often the best approach.
A user forum. Why does that work so well?
It fosters a sense of community, shared responsibility. It gives employees a place to get answers, voice concerns, and crucially, learn from their peers who are going through the same AI-related changes. This kind of peer-to-peer learning and open communication tends to be far more effective for long-term buy-in than just top-down mandates, tracking KPIs, or using penalties.
Empowering those internal communities definitely seems more effective than just issuing orders. And to help employees adjust when AI changes their job duties, what approach works best to smooth that transition?
Involving the end users directly in the design of the AI implementation is the best way to help employees adjust.
Involve them in the design.
Yes. By including the actual people who will be using the AI solution in the design phase, you ensure the solution actually meets their needs, addresses their concerns up front. It stops it feeling like something being imposed on them.
Right.
This direct involvement creates a sense of ownership, fosters more optimism about the initiative, and leads to more sustained adoption and a much smoother transition into those newer adjusted roles.
That collaborative approach makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about crisis management for AI? Imagine an emergency change is needed to an AI model, but doing a full retraining just isn't feasible. Maybe it takes too long, costs too much. What's the best course of action then?
In that emergency scenario, when retraining isn't an option, the best approach is usually to implement input-output validation.
Input-output validation, how does that work?
It essentially involves deploying additional software or rules outside the core AI model itself. This extra layer filters problematic input data before it reaches the model, and it can also check or sanitize the model's output after it makes a prediction. It shields the model from bad data and inoculates against bad outputs.
Ah, like guardrails.
Exactly. It provides a timely, effective solution for emergency, letting the system keep operating reliably without needing that full, time-consuming retraining process right away.
That sounds like a crucial workaround to have in your back pocket. Now, why is it so essential to continuously observe the predictions an AI solution makes once it's deployed? What's the primary purpose of that ongoing vigilance?
The primary purpose of constantly observing the predictions is to handle changes in the data and the models effectively.
Handling change.
Right. AI systems operate in these dynamic environments. Underlying data patterns shift, models themselves might need tweaking. Continuous observation lets organizations spot these changes almost as they happen, understand how they're impacting the AI's performance, and then proactively manage the system. Ensure it adapts accurately to new conditions, stays relevant, stays accurate, and this ongoing observation directly informs how you manage things like data drift and how you standardize pre-processing steps when you do modify data sources for the AI system. That observation is essential for maintaining performance over time.
Okay, let's shift now to the ongoing supervision of AI solutions. We hear about model cards. What's the primary function of these model cards in AI testing? Sounds like a way to document models transparently.
That's precisely what they are. The primary function of model cards in AI testing is providing a transparent overview of the capabilities and the limitations of the model.
Capabilities and limitations.
Yeah. Model cards are basically documents that detail critical info about an AI model. Things like its performance metrics, any known limitations or weaknesses, the intended use cases, and importantly, ethical considerations that went into it.
Hmm.
They serve as a crucial starting point for developing targeted test cases, for understanding where the model might struggle, and for ensuring accountability. They're really invaluable for comprehensive AI testing and making sure the model is used appropriately.
So they're almost like a detailed nutritional label for an AI model. Okay, what's essential for making sure an AI model keeps being effective over the long haul?
Monitoring shifts in both the data and the model outcomes is essential for ensuring long-term effectiveness.
Monitoring data and outcomes.
Yes, because as real-world data evolves and the environment changes, an AI model's performance can degrade. We talked about drift. Continuous monitoring lets organizations spot that performance degradation early. This vigilance allows for timely updates, adjustments, maybe even retraining, ensuring the model stays reliable and accurate even as conditions change. This continuous performance monitoring really is the most effective way to ensure ML models remain reliable over time.
Constant vigilance really seems to be the recurring theme here. Okay, who would most likely be called in to help IT management assess the accuracy and effectiveness of AI solution outputs? Who typically has that specialized expertise?
Data scientists would most likely be the ones assisting IT management with that assessment.
Data scientists.
Yeah. Data scientists have that specialized expertise in data analytics, model evaluation, understanding complex algorithms. They're best equipped to perform the necessary analyses to really dig into the accuracy, the effectiveness, the underlying behavior of AI solutions. They provide critical insights that maybe the AI developers themselves lack for an objective evaluation, and it's certainly beyond what customer support or legal teams could do.
They're the go-to experts for really deciphering model performance. Okay, if an IS auditor finds significant differences between how a model performed on its training data versus how it performed on separate testing data, what's the likely cause? What does that discrepancy usually signal?
If an auditor sees significant discrepancies between training and testing outcomes, the most likely culprit is that the model might be overfitted to the training data.
Overfitting again?
Yes. Overfitting happens when the AI algorithm learns the training data too well. It starts memorizing the noise, the specific examples, instead of learning the general underlying patterns. So consequently, it performs exceptionally well on the training data it already knows. But it fails to generalize and performs poorly when it sees new, unseen testing data. That's what causes that discrepancy. And again, this is why techniques like reducing the number of features during training can help prevent overfitting.
That's a classic pitfall in machine learning for sure. Let's talk about bias specifically. If an AI solution starts showing, say, Gender discrimination in its outcomes. What type of bias does that typically point towards?
An AI solution showing gender discrimination would typically be explained by systemic bias.
Systemic bias.
Right. Systemic bias results from inherent biases that are already embedded within the training data itself, or maybe from institutional procedures and processes that lead to unfair outcomes for certain social categories, like gender.
So it's baked in.
Often, yes. This type of bias is deeply ingrained. It requires proactive steps to mitigate, because it's not just about an individual's judgment or simple statistical representation. It's often a reflection of societal or organizational inequalities that were present in the data the AI learned from. And this raises a really important question, doesn't it? It's not just about the intent of the person designing the AI, but about those embedded biases within the data and the broader processes themselves that the AI inevitably learns from.
That's a powerful insight into where bias often comes from. Okay, for AI models making real-time decisions, what factor would most likely affect their relevance and accuracy as time goes on?
Model drift would most likely affect the relevance and accuracy of real-time AI decision-making over time.
Model drift again. It seems critical for real-time.
It really is. Model drift, remember, is when discrepancies emerge between the data used to originally train the model and the new real-time data coming in. This phenomenon significantly impacts AI applications that need to make decisions on the fly, because the patterns the model learned during training just don't accurately reflect the constantly changing nature of real-world data anymore. This directly causes accuracy and relevance to decrease.
Again, the dynamic nature of data demands dynamic AI management. To ensure AI solutions actually meet ethical guidelines, what's absolutely essential in their ongoing supervision?
Including humans in oversight activities is essential to ensure AI solutions meet ethical guidelines.
Humans in the loop.
Yes. While things like having access to large data sets or reducing model complexity are important parts of AI development, human involvement provides that critical layer of ethical judgment and accountability. Humans in the loop can review AI decisions, monitor for unintended consequences, ensure the system aligns with ethical values, societal norms. Technology alone just cannot guarantee ethical behavior. This human oversight is also the best way an enterprise can address changes that happen due to an AI model becoming increasingly able to make independent decisions.
Human involvement provides that crucial ethical safety net. And speaking of trust, why is it absolutely essential for AI solutions to be transparent and understandable? What's the core reason?
It's essential for AI solutions to be transparent and understandable, primarily to ensure stakeholders' trust in the outcomes of the solution.
It comes down to trust.
Fundamentally, transparent and understandable models allow employees, customers, regulators, other stakeholders to comprehend how the AI solution makes its decisions. This comprehension is absolutely fundamental for building and maintaining trust in the model's outputs. And that trust is crucial for its adoption, its acceptance within the organization and by the public. Without transparency, trust just erodes, regardless of other factors like job adjustments or system compatibility.
Okay, let's move into the really critical area of testing techniques specifically for AI solutions. Imagine a healthcare organization training an AI model for common ailments, but they run into data imbalance. Some conditions are much more represented than others. What's the best course of action?
For that healthcare organization facing data imbalance, the best action is to use oversampling and undersampling methodologies.
Oversampling and undersampling.
Right. Data imbalance, where certain conditions are underrepresented, can lead to serious bias and inaccuracies, especially for those less common ailments. Oversampling artificially increases the representation of the minority classes, the rare conditions, while undersampling reduces the representation of the majority classes, the common ones. Applying these techniques helps balance the dataset's class distribution, which improves the model's performance and reduces bias, ensuring it's more accurate across all the conditions it needs to recognize.
That sounds like a really robust way to ensure fairness and accuracy in a critical field. Okay, what if the source code for an AI system isn't available? It's a black box, but you still need to figure out something about how it makes decisions. What technique best helps with that?
Black box testing is the technique that best assists in making inferences about AI decisions when the source code is unavailable.
Black box testing.
Yeah, it's a concept borrowed from conventional software testing. It involves feeding various inputs into the system and carefully observing the outputs to try and map out the decision paths, all without needing to see the internal code or mechanisms. It can be time-consuming, sure, but it's invaluable when the AI's internal logic is opaque. It lets you gain insight into how the model behaves. This is especially crucial for understanding those advanced, non-deterministic AI models where the complex multidimensional math they use is incredibly difficult for humans to interpret directly, unlike traditional code.
So it's like trying to figure out the rules of a game just by playing it without seeing the rule book. Got it. What's the main objective, the main reason for dividing data sets into separate training, validation, and testing sets during AI model development?
The main objective of splitting data sets like that, training, validation, testing, is to ensure the model performs consistently on unfamiliar data sets, to ensure it generalizes.
Generalization.
Right. This methodical splitting lets you train the model on one chunk of data, then use a separate validation set to fine-tune it, optimize its parameters, and then finally evaluate its performance on a completely separate, unseen test set. This whole process helps prevent overfitting and confirms that the model can actually generalize well to new, real-world data, giving you confidence in how it will function once deployed. This also means that using that validation data specifically to fine-tune hyperparameters is the most crucial step when you're evaluating an AI framework's ability to generalize.
It's all about proving it's ready for the real world, not just the data it grew up on. Okay, what's the most significant negative consequence of having only limited data available to train an AI model?
The most significant consequence of having a limited training data is ending up with inaccurate or biased outputs.
Inaccurate or biased?
Yes. When a model is trained on insufficient volume or variety of data, it simply cannot learn the full range of patterns and relationships it needs for accurate predictions. This data scarcity directly leads to poor performance. But critically, it can also amplify existing biases if certain groups or conditions are underrepresented in that already limited data set. This results in unfair or unreliable outcomes.
So both the quantity and the quality, the representativeness of data are absolutely critical. Okay, when you're evaluating different AI system outputs using A/B testing, what specific variables are the most effective ones to modify if you want to see a real impact and compare performance?
The most effective variables to modify in A/B testing for AI outputs are typically the dataset features, the model architectures, and the hyperparameters.
Features, architecture, hyperparameters.
Exactly. These are the core components that significantly influence how an AI model processes data, how it learns, and ultimately how it performs. By systematically tweaking these variables in your A/B tests, comparing Model A with slightly different features to Model B, for instance, you can directly compare how different configurations affect the outputs, figure out which version performs better under which conditions, and gain valuable insights into their underlying behavior.
That makes sense. Target the core levers that actually drive AI performance. Okay, final one for testing. Imagine an audit of a medical diagnostic AI. Which sampling method would be the most appropriate for checking the representation of its training data?
For an audit of medical diagnostic AI training data, stratified sampling is the most appropriate method.
Stratified sampling, why that one?
Stratified sampling involves dividing the entire population, or the potential patient data, into relevant subgroups, or strata may be based on disease condition, age group, demographic, etc. Then you draw samples from each of those subgroups proportionally.
Ensures representation.
Exactly. In a medical context, this ensures that all pertinent characteristics are adequately represented in the audit sample. It's crucial for complex medical data to prevent bias and make sure the AI's diagnostic accuracy is being evaluated fairly across diverse patient populations.
Stratified sampling gives you that comprehensive representation, especially critical when the stakes are so high. One quick follow-up on test model cards. What's their primary purpose again in AI solutions?
Right. Test model cards. Their primary purpose is to provide a detailed record of the model's performance, its limitations, and its intended use. They are a key tool for transparency and accountability. They document comprehensive information, how it did in tests, where its weaknesses are, what it's supposed to be used for. This info is critical for ensuring appropriate, responsible, and ethical use of the AI.
All right, let's turn our focus now specifically to threats and vulnerabilities that are unique or particularly relevant to AI systems. What's the most likely negative outcome if there's malicious interference with an AI solution during its training phase, like data poisoning?
If there's malicious interference during training, the most likely result is serious reliability and safety concerns.
Reliability and safety.
Yeah. If an attacker manages to inject poisoned or deliberately altered data into the training data set, it directly degrades the quality of the resulting model. This can lead to the AI making unreliable, biased, or just plain incorrect outputs when it's deployed in the real world. And that can have significant safety implications, especially in critical applications like autonomous driving or medical diagnosis. This kind of attack is different from, say, data leakage or just disrupting operations. It fundamentally corrupts the learning process itself.
So a compromised foundation inevitably leads to compromised, potentially dangerous outputs. Okay, when developing AI models using popular tools like Jupyter Notebooks, what's considered the most significant security threat?
The most significant threat during development using tools like Jupyter Notebooks is often data leakage.
Data leakage from development tools?
Yeah. Individual development tools, especially things like notebooks running in potentially less secure web environments, can be quite vulnerable to sensitive data exposure. If the security controls around those environments are weak, these tools can inadvertently expose enterprise data, code, or model details to unauthorized users or even external environments. That makes data leakage a critical concern in those kinds of development setups.
That's a stark reminder about the need to really lock down development environments.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the primary purpose of using prompt templates in AI systems, especially when interacting with large language models?
The primary purpose of using prompt templates is to ensure consistent input in order to generate reliable outputs.
Consistent input leads to reliable output.
Exactly. Prompt templates standardize the way information and instructions are presented to the AI model. This reduces variability, minimizes ambiguity, and generally improves the accuracy and reliability of the AI's responses. By providing a consistent, structured format for the inputs, these templates help ensure the AI understands the instructions as intended, leading to more predictable and dependable outcomes. This consistency is also why standardized templates are considered the best way to protect against input manipulation threats to AI systems.
So they act like guardrails for the input, guiding the AI towards more predictable and secure responses. Got it. More generally, what's the best fundamental way to protect AI systems against unauthorized access and misuse?
The best fundamental way to protect AI systems is by implementing strong access controls and encryption.
Access controls and encryption. The basics still apply.
They absolutely do, and they're critical here. Strong access controls ensure only authorized users can get into the AI system, its data, its components. Encryption protects the data itself, both when it's moving in transit and when it's stored at rest, making it unreadable and unusable to anyone unauthorized. This combination provides robust, layered protection against both unauthorized access and misuse.
Core security principles remain paramount. Okay, which common type of attack specifically compromises an AI model's integrity during development when you're using data supplied by a third party?
A common attack vector there is when an attacker modifies the data during the preprocessing stage.
Tampering with data during preprocessing.
Yes, if altered or poisoned data gets introduced at that critical preprocessing stage, before it even goes into the model training, it can directly manipulate the model's final outcome, its behavior. This really underscores the vital importance of having robust data security practices, especially validating data integrity when you're incorporating data from external suppliers. You have to maintain the integrity of the AI system you're building.
That really highlights the vulnerability in the data supply chain itself.
Okay, finally on threats. Deepfakes. Beyond just being fake content, what's the biggest concern associated with deepfake technology? What's the broader societal worry?
The biggest concern associated with deepfakes is their potential to spread misinformation by creating incredibly realistic video and audio content.
Spreading misinformation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Deepfakes use AI to generate these fabricated yet highly convincing videos or audio clips. The primary societal implication is their power to manipulate public opinion, deceive individuals, spread false narratives on a massive scale, which has really serious ramifications for trust in media, for security, and for overall societal stability.
All right, let's wrap up our discussion on AI operations by looking at incident response management, but specifically tailored for AI-related incidents. What's considered the most significant hurdle in just detecting AI-related incidents compared to traditional software problems?
The most significant obstacle in detection is often that the unpredictable nature of AI outputs complicates threshold determination. Unpredictable outputs make thresholds tricky.
Exactly. Unlike traditional software that might throw a clear error code or have a very obvious failure state, AI model outputs can be, well, erratic. They might subtly deviate or produce outputs that are weird but not technically wrong according to simple rules. This makes it really hard to set clear, reliable thresholds for what actually constitutes an incident worth investigating. This inherent unpredictability makes spotting subtle malicious activity or gradual performance degradation much more challenging. There's often no obvious wrong behavior to automatically flag, which then makes resolving things more complex too.
That sounds like a constant monitoring challenge in itself. Okay, what's the primary role of having regression plans as part of AI incident response management?
The primary role of regression plans in AI incident response is to ensure the AI system can revert to a previous stable state after an incident occurs.
Reverting to stable state, so rollback.
Essentially, yes. Regression plans aren't about adding new features or boosting performance. They're specifically focused on restoring functionality and continuity. Their purpose is to minimize the impact of an incident by enabling the system to quickly recover and continue operating from a known, good previous state. It ensures stability and reliability of operations after something goes wrong.
So a reliable rollback mechanism is key. For ongoing compliance of a high-risk AI system, what specific aspect of documentation should an IS auditor be particularly keen to verify?
For a high-risk AI system's ongoing compliance, an IS auditor should definitely verify the procedures for continuous operation surveillance and critical incident reporting.
Continuous surveillance and reporting procedures.
Yes. That aspect of documentation is crucial because high-risk AI systems demand constant monitoring to spot emerging risks and ensure they continue to adhere to operational standards and regulations over time. Verifying that these ongoing surveillance and reporting procedures are in place and being followed is essential for the auditor to confirm the organization can proactively manage and respond to any issues that arise, thereby maintaining compliance long-term.
Those ongoing procedures sound critical for high-stakes systems. During an actual AI incident, especially one that might involve personal data, who would be the most valuable person or role to advise the incident response team on the impact to that data?
Privacy experts would be the most valuable resource in advising the incident response team on personal data impact issues during an AI incident.
Privacy experts.
Definitely. They have that specialized knowledge of data privacy regulations, data subject rights, breach notification requirements, compliance obligations. Their insights are critical for accurately assessing the potential harm of a breach involving personal data, guiding the appropriate response actions, and ensuring all the legal and regulatory duties related to personal data are met during a very sensitive situation.
They're the go-to for navigating the complex privacy landscape during a crisis. What's an absolutely essential element that needs to be in any effective AI breach response policy?
An essential element of an AI breach response policy is establishing a clear protocol for immediate incident reporting and response.
A clear, immediate protocol.
Yes. A well-defined protocol that can be acted upon promptly ensures that when an AI-related breach happens, the organization can react swiftly and in a coordinated way. This minimizes the damage, limits potential escalation, and facilitates a rapid restoration of normal operations. That swift, coordinated action is crucial for mitigating the impact of any security incident involving AI.
Swift, coordinated action is key. Now, how do containment strategies for AI-related incidents typically differ from how we contain conventional software incidents?
Containment strategies for AI incidents differ primarily because they have to consider the inherent complexity of AI solutions.
Complexity makes containment different.
Yeah. Unlike maybe just isolating a server or shutting down a specific service in a conventional incident, AI solutions are often highly complex, deeply interconnected systems dealing with vast amounts of data. This means simple isolation or a full shutdown might not be feasible or even desirable given the system's function.
Right.
So containment often requires more nuanced approaches, things like implementing stricter data validation, sanitizing inputs and outputs, carefully managing access controls rather than just pulling the plug. This complexity in containment is also tied to the biggest obstacle in resolving AI incidents compared to traditional software. AI retraining often demands substantial resources, time, and data, especially for large models. This makes quick fixes much less straightforward than just applying a simple software patch.
It really sounds like a much more nuanced and potentially far more resource-intensive recovery process than many organizations might be used to. Okay, let's move into our final section, AI auditing tools and techniques, how we verify AI integrity. First up, what's the primary purpose of actually cataloging all the AI systems being used within an organization? Why bother building that inventory?
The primary purpose of cataloging AI systems is that an AI inventory helps both the enterprise and its auditors understand where and how AI is currently being used throughout the company.
Visibility.
Exactly. This inventory ensures transparency and provides a comprehensive understanding of the organization's entire AI landscape.
Yeah.
And it's crucial for effective oversight, for proper risk management, for compliance. It lets both internal stakeholders and external auditors assess the full scope of AI deployment and identify potential areas of concern or high risk. It's not just about finding things to punish or evaluating cost. It's about knowing what you have.
So it's really about gaining that essential visibility and control over your entire AI footprint. Okay, imagine an auditor is evaluating an AI recruitment tool, specifically looking for bias. What critical steps should they take to ensure equity?
To ensure equity when auditing an AI recruitment tool for bias, the most critical step is to conduct bias audits prior to deployment.
Before it goes live?
Absolutely. Proactive bias audits are essential. They aim to identify and mitigate any inherent biases in the AI system before it starts making real-world decisions that impact actual job candidates. This proactive approach aligns with ethical standards for fair technology use and ensures potential biases are addressed early rather than discovering them only after discriminatory outcomes have already happened in practice. This is also a key part of ensuring compliance with regulations, which we know is a critical governance concern for automated decision-making.
Preemptive action for fairness is definitely the way to go. What kind of specific expertise does an auditor need if they're applying judgmental sampling during AI audits, particularly when trying to evaluate bias?
For judgmental sampling in AI audits, especially for bias evaluation, the auditor needs deep knowledge in the specific field of the AI application itself.
Domain expertise.
Precisely. Judgmental sampling relies heavily on the auditor's expertise and judgment to select the most relevant data samples. To effectively identify potential biases, or even just verify if the training data representation is adequate, the auditor absolutely must have a thorough understanding of the AI application's context, the specific domain it operates in, like finance, healthcare, HR, and the potential sources of bias unique to that field. General auditing skills or statistical knowledge alone just won't cut it. This deep knowledge also makes judgment-based sampling the best method overall when an auditor needs to examine a large AI dataset specifically to ensure bias concerns have been adequately addressed.
That a domain-specific expertise sounds absolutely crucial for targeted and effective auditing.
Okay, how can a technique called comparison testing be used to assess different aspects of an AI model's dataset? Comparison testing assesses dataset aspects by modifying specific data attributes and then observing the impact on the model's outcomes.
Modify attributes, see what happens.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
This technique involves systematically altering certain features or attributes within the dataset, maybe changing demographic information or adjusting input parameters and then comparing the AI model's outputs before and after the change. This allows for a direct evaluation of how changes in the input data influence the AI's performance. It helps auditors and developers understand the model's sensitivity to different data characteristics and pinpoint any unintended consequences or biases tied to specific attributes. It's a very precise way to probe causality within the model's behavior.
Comparison testing really provides that causal insight. Okay, looking now at how auditors collect evidence, what's the main benefit for an IS audit team if they use optical character recognition, OCR technology to help refine their data collection process?
The main benefit of using OCR for an IS audit team is enhanced accuracy and processing speed for handling reports and documentation.
Accuracy and speed.
Yes. OCR tech converts various types of documents, like scanned images, PDFs containing text, into actual machine-readable text data. This significantly improves the efficiency and accuracy of extracting information from audit evidence. It reduces manual data entry errors, speeds up the processing of potentially large volumes of reports or logs, and ultimately streamlines the entire audit process.
So it's about automating that data extraction for better efficiency and fewer errors. What's considered the best method for collecting vast amounts of data from websites, specifically to be processed by an LLM for evaluating audit evidence?
The best method for collecting large volumes of website data for LLM processing in an audit context is data scraping.
Data scraping.
Right. Data scraping tools are highly effective for automatically aggregating huge amounts of publicly available data from multiple websites into a structured format. LLMs often need extensive data sets to perform effective analysis, so scraping allows auditors to gather this broad information efficiently, which the LLM can then leverage to evaluate audit evidence comprehensively. Other methods, like user interviews or generating synthetic data, just aren't suitable for that kind of large-scale web data collection.
Scraping for scale makes sense. Okay, when conducting interviews, maybe to gather information for that AI inventory we talked about, what's fundamental for ensuring you get high-quality data from those interviews?
Using a consistent set of questions for all interviewees is fundamental for ensuring high data quality during those interviews.
Standardized questions?
Yes. Standardized questions ensure you collect data uniformly across different people, different departments. This consistency allows for much clearer categorization of the AI technologies being discussed, enables more effective analysis of the responses later on, and reduces variability or subjectivity in the information you gather. That's crucial for building an accurate and reliable AI inventory.
Standardized questions lead to standardized, comparable data. What's a primary concern auditors should have if they're using speech-to-text tools to help aggregate data during audit interviews?
A primary concern with using speech-to-text tools in audit interviews is understanding exactly how the tool processes the audio data into text and, importantly, where and how it stores that data for use.
How and where it's processed and stored.
Exactly. Specifically, if the tool relies on off-site third-party processing of that audio data, it can raise significant issues around data integrity, privacy, and even legal compliance, especially as sensitive audit information is being discussed. Auditors need absolute clarity and assurance that the data remains secure and private throughout that entire conversion and storage process. Third-party handling always introduces risk.
Those third-party data processing risks seem to pop up everywhere. Okay, shifting to data quality and analytics and audits. What's the best way for an organization or auditor to ensure that the data used to train an AI model was obtained legally?
The best way to ensure AI training data is legally obtained is to obtain consent prior to training.
Consent first.
Yes. Especially given how many AI techniques are effectively black boxes, transparency and consent become imperative. Ensuring that the individuals whose data is being used, the data subjects, have explicitly consented to their data being used for AI model training is crucial for complying with legal and regulatory requirements, like privacy laws, GDPR, CCPA, etc. It helps avoid potentially massive legal and privacy violations. This approach ensures data is acquired ethically and lawfully from the outset.
Consent really is foundational for both legal and ethical data use. Which specific data quality dimensions best help an auditor verify that data hasn't been mishandled or incorrectly modified somewhere along the line?
The data quality dimensions that best verify data hasn't been improperly handled or modified are accuracy, consistency, and completeness.
Accuracy, consistency, completeness. The big three.
Pretty much, yes. Accuracy ensures the data is precise, correct, and free from errors. Consistency means the data is uniform and doesn't contradict itself across different systems or time points. Completeness ensures that all the required data is actually present, with no critical gaps. Together, these three aspects confirm that the data is reliable, uniform, and comprehensive, which is crucial for upholding data integrity and preventing data corruption from impacting AI systems.
That triad of qualities really ensures data integrity. What's seen as the most significant obstacle when trying to identify contaminated or poisoned data within very large AI training datasets?
The most significant obstacle is often that data can be modified at numerous different points within its entire data lifecycle.
Multiple points of potential corruption.
Exactly. Large data sets usually have many access points. They go through multiple transformations from initial collection through various cleaning and pre-processing steps, integration, storage. This extensive, often complex data pipeline makes it incredibly difficult to pinpoint exactly where and when harmful or contaminated data might have been introduced. This really complicates efforts to ensure data purity and ultimately model reliability.
The sheer complexity of the data pipeline makes it a potential needle in a haystack problem. Okay, last one in this section. Which approach would most effectively manage those hallucinations sometimes generated by AI solutions, particularly generative AI models?
Applying constraints to both the inputs and the outputs would most effectively manage AI hallucinations.
Input and output constraints.
Yes. Hallucinations happen when AI models, especially generative ones, produce outputs that sound plausible but are actually factually incorrect, nonsensical, or just completely fabricated. By defining strict boundaries, rules, or templates for both the input prompts and the expected format or content of the outputs, you can help minimize the model's tendency to go off script and hallucinate. It helps ensure its responses stay more reliable and aligned with factual information or desired parameters rather than just letting it run wild or trying to solve it by adding more data or complexity, which doesn't always work. It's about guiding the AI to stay within reliable boundaries.
That sounds like a very practical way to keep generative AI more grounded in reality. Okay, moving to the final stage. Audit outputs and reports. What's a main benefit of an auditor using sentiment analysis when assessing AI systems or their impact?
A main benefit of using sentiment analysis and assessing AI systems is gaining insight into the impressions and feelings of stakeholders related to the enterprise or the AI itself.
Gauging stakeholder feelings.
Right. Sentiment analysis tools review textual inputs, think social media posts, customer feedback surveys, maybe even internal employee comments to gauge the feelings, attitudes, opinions expressed. This provides crucial qualitative insights into how the AI system Or perhaps the organization's use of AI is being perceived by various groups. This can be invaluable for understanding societal impacts, levels of public trust, and potential reputational risks associated with the AI.
So it helps take the temperature, gauge the public or internal pulse on AI initiatives. What's the main function of advisory reports specifically within the context of AI audits? How do they differ from regular audit reports?
The main function of advisory reports in AI audits is really to consult on process improvements and risk management strategies.
Consultative, not just findings.
Exactly. Unlike traditional audit reports that might focus primarily on compliance findings or pointing at deficiencies, advisory reports in the AI space serve more as a consultative tool. They offer actionable guidance, practical recommendations for enhancing the AI solutions, improving the underlying processes, strengthening risk management frameworks around AI. Their purpose is to provide forward-looking advice aimed at optimization and proactive risk mitigation, rather than just looking backward at problems.
So they're a proactive guide for getting better. What best ensures effective communication and, importantly, prompt resolution of findings that do come up in an AI audit?
Linking the audit issues directly to risk evaluations and establishing clear, actionable timelines best ensures effective communication and prompt resolution.
Linking findings to risk and setting deadlines.
Precisely. By clearly connecting each finding to its associated business or operational risk, stakeholders immediately understand the potential impact and the urgency. And providing clear, actionable timelines for remediation creates accountability and ensures issues are actually addressed promptly. This combination facilitates understanding and drives quick resolution much more effectively than just lengthy technical explanations or simply emphasizing adherence to policy.
Clear risks and clear timelines definitely seem to drive swift action. Okay, final question. What would truly help integrate AI itself into the broader audit processing and reporting functions within an organization? Using AI to audit AI, essentially.
Implementing automated reporting systems, powered by AI, would significantly help integrate AI into audit processing and reporting.
Automated reporting systems.
Yeah. This involves developing algorithms, potentially using AI or machine learning, that can conduct certain audit tests automatically and even generate draft reports or summaries. This approach reduces redundancy in many traditional manual audit tasks. It frees up the human auditor's time to focus on more strategic analysis, judgment, and providing deeper insights. It enhances the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the audit process itself.
So what does this all mean? It means the very tools we're spending all this time discussing how to govern an audit can also make the auditing process itself smarter, faster, and more efficient. It creates this kind of symbiotic relationship between AI and the audit function.
That's a great way to put it, a symbiotic relationship. Hashtag outro.
Wow, what a journey we've really taken today. We must have covered, what, over 100 specific points? It just shows how deeply AI touches absolutely every part of an organization.
It really does.
From the super technical details of development and deployment all the way through to robust governance, critical ethical thinking, vigilant risk management, and even that crucial human element in workforce change. It's just crystal clear that understanding all these interconnected pieces isn't just, nice to have. It's absolutely key to adopting AI successfully and, importantly, responsibly.
Indeed. We've covered such a vast amount of ground today, from the subtle nuances of things like model drift and data balancing, all the way to the societal impact of deepfakes and that critical role of human oversight and dedicated ethics committees. It really raises an important question, I think, for all of us to consider. As AI continues to evolve at this just breakneck speed, how do we make sure that our governance frameworks, our operational practices, and frankly, our very thinking about AI evolve even faster? How do we get ahead of the curve to anticipate not just the incredible opportunities AI offers, but also the really complex ethical and operational challenges that inevitably lie just around the corner?
That is a powerful thought to ponder. How do we keep pace or even get ahead? Well, thank you all for joining us on this incredibly detailed deep dive into the world of AI governance and operations. We sincerely hope these insights don't just leave you feeling more well-informed, but also genuinely spark your continued curiosity about how AI is reshaping our world every single day. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep exploring.